So, ghosting people, that's something that happens a lot. Doesn't really happen to me that much because I don't put myself out there to have new friendships or relationships and stuff like that. But this is what I'm thinking, and this is what I try to tell my sister often that, well, it's a combination of something that I just thought, and I think that that makes what I've been suggesting to my sister for a long time to be a good idea, which is that you should never ghost anybody. If you want to stop talking to somebody, even if you try to tell them as frankly as possible, and is not getting through to them, and then you just stop communicating. I think that people like to say this thing like you don't owe anybody any explanation to anything like that, and I think that to be technically honest, that's true, but I think it's more about the habit of what you do than the individual. Like, yeah, okay, you don't owe anybody anything, but if you make it a habit of, okay, I don't want to be in a relationship with this person anymore, or I don't want to talk to this person as a friend or anything like that anymore, and I'm just going to cut that off right there, ignore them, then that's a habit that you're making. And that habit that you make, who's to say that it's not going to continue within your relationship? And in your relationship, you decide that, okay, I don't want to talk anymore, and you just shut down. Well, people might think that, oh, that's not really a big deal. But there are 4 horsemen of divorce. There's a guy who can predict, he says he can predict who will get a divorce with a 90-something% accuracy. And there are 4 things that he looks out for as to say whether or not somebody might get a divorce. And if all 4 of those things are present in a relationship, it's a very high likelihood that that couple are going to get divorced. And one of those things is what we'd call stonewalling, where you just completely disengage. If it was somebody that you weren't in a relationship with, I guess you might say that you ghost that person, ghost the conversation, you're just done. There are others like if you defense, I think like if you're defending yourself, like everything you say, everything that somebody brings up, you have a defense for it. And then if you're contemptuous of the person, like if you roll your eyes when they talk, then you don't really see them as a person kind of thing. Like if you criticize the things that they do as opposed to, suggesting like something else that someone could do or something like that. And I can't remember what the 4th one is. But that's the idea. I remember I had this, what's this thing called for your steering wheel of your car? And the club, right? And I would go to this place and park my car and I'd put the club on. And somebody was telling me, like, why are you putting the club on? This is a safe space. There's no problems are going to happen here, Why are you putting it on? And I really couldn't think of a reason why at the time I should put it on. But what I realized is that it has nothing to do with whether or not the place is safe. It has to do with the habit of doing that. Almost every other place that I go, a car could be stolen. If I develop a habit of not putting it on in any given place, there's no telling when it is I might implement that habit in a place that just happened not to be safe. If I have a habit of continually doing that, then there's no issue. I remember as well, every so often, and I might have mentioned this before, I would lock my keys in the car. And, my mother and I, it's my mother's car and she uses the car, and she never locked her key in the car. she never locked her keys in the car, or the keys in the car. And I was like, wait a minute, what's going on here? I have to call a locksmith. I have to do this or that. I have somebody drive me to pick up this spare set of keys and all this other stuff. And I realized what my mother would do is she would lock the door with the keys. So the keys had to be in her hand. So she would never end up with that habit. And once I started doing that, it has never happened to me again that I would lock the keys in the car. And it's the same thing with whether or not you are in a relationship with somebody, whether or not you ever want to talk to them again, whatever it is, if you get into the habit of treating anybody a particular way, that is likely to bleed over into every relationship that you have. I remember that it was very difficult for me to tell my mother or my sister or anybody that I love them. Once I got my first girlfriend and I started getting in the habit of telling her that I love you, it was easy. It was like nothing to tell anybody else. Friends, male friends, anybody, it didn't matter. It was really easy to tell anybody that, hey, I love you, man. And it wasn't a big deal, whereas before it was. And what I realized is that being as honest as possible with everyone all of the time, you don't have to always be absolutely 100% honest, but as honest as you feel comfortable with, or sometimes even beyond that, is a good idea. Because once you stick to the truth, there's nothing, you don't have to remember what you made up, and it's the same thing when it comes to ghosting or whatever else it is. If you have a habit that you can maintain at all times, then it will help your relationship. If you are looking to find a special somebody and you are ghosting people, when you get into that relationship, you're probably going to be stonewalling that person in discussions that you need to have, that are healthy to have, about what it is, even to bring up things about what it is that you really want or anything. So me personally, even if, let's say, I connect with somebody on Tinder when I was using Tinder, and I don't feel like talking to that person anymore, I would say beforehand, I don't think that this is really going very well, and I'm going to end our connection. And I did that one of the last times, because I didn't think it was going anywhere. And I think that helps people to be honest. And I think that, there's something that I want to tell my mother, which is that, I guess it doesn't directly relate, but it kind of does. My mother kind of, to me, focuses on a lot of very superficial things. For example, like, the exact angle at which my uncle's pants, my uncle with dementia, what angle of his pants are, even though it might not affect anything. But for other things that, to me, I believe are crucial, she's a little bit less stringent about. And I also don't think that she takes really good care of herself. So I was just going to tell her sometime that, you're probably going to die young, but you're going to look pretty when you die young. You're going to look put together. Which probably sounds kind of crude, but that's how you talk, I suppose, when you talk to your family in a real way, frankly. And I don't think she'd be offended. And if she is, then that's unfortunate. But I think that, talking to people honestly is necessary. Of course, like I said, you don't want to be offensive, and my mother has enough history with me that she shouldn't be offended by that. So anyway, that's my 2 cents. I'll talk to y'all later, maybe.